Hey, everybody, welcome to the official Do Good Better podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Kirby. And of course, we talk to people and try to bring up subjects that help our small and medium-sized nonprofits raise more money, do more good. That's what this podcast is all about. And I feel like sometimes we need a reminder about the actual and exceptional skills that it takes to work in the nonprofit industry. And yes, there are programs and services that require technical stuff. But when you're a fundraiser and when you're an event planner and when you're a general people person, soft skills, a thing that we don't talk about enough, and yet we all think we probably have. Let's learn some more today on the importance of soft skills. With me today, Josh Davies. He is the founder and CEO of the Center for Work Ethic Development. Josh, thank you for being on the official Do Good Better podcast. Welcome, my friend.
It's a total mouthful, but I get it. Thank you very much. It is an honor to be here with you and to, help people do good better. I love it. That is what we are all about at the Center for Work Ethic Development. We're an organization based in Denver, Colorado, but we partner with folks around the country and even internationally to help develop the foundational workplace skills, AKA soft skills, of the workforce. And, sometimes that looks like, programs in middle schools, high schools. We do post-secondary work at technical colleges, community colleges, four-year institutions, government workforce centers, nonprofit groups, community-based organizations, veterans groups. Heck, we work with correctional facilities, anywhere where we're trying to help people get and keep employment. Because at the end of the day, those technical skills like you talked about are nice, and they'll get you in the door. But without soft skills, you won't be on the other side of that door long. It's going to be a revolving one, and you're going to end up right back where you were before. And, if you're an entry-level job, that's rough. But when you're a nonprofit and you're driven by your mission, it's really, really important to make sure that you emphasize and really develop your own soft skills, no matter how good you think they are today.
It's such a good point, because I think we get into I wouldn't say necessarily a rut, but we get into comfortability, right? So we kind of go through some of the emotions and we forget that we can still hone these specific skills to not only do better, but then build better relationships in the process. And I think when you are talking about asking people for money, you're talking about solicitation. One of the requirements is to be relatable, to be understanding, to not necessarily have proficiency in Excel spreadsheets, but you have to be, show appreciation and accept those for who you are. Like, there are a lot of things that you teach over at the Center for Work Ethic Development that are specifically tied to the most important things that our friends in the nonprofit world go. So let's kind of start at the start, beginning. How did you start this? I think that's an interesting starting point before we kind of get into what specific soft skills can we learn or what you can help us translate. But how did you get started with this?
Yeah, well, like most people, it's not my first career. We move around, and I spent my first 15 years doing corporate training around leadership and development for hotel and restaurant management companies. So I got a chance to work with emerging leaders, but what I really fell in love with for the industry was that it was not necessarily knowledge driven. Like, you can develop the skills you need, but it's about the soft skills, right? If you have those skills, you will be successful in that industry. And what I love then is it becomes a total equalizer, right? If you got those skills, it doesn't matter where you're from. It doesn't matter what your education is. You can make it happen. And what I realized is that I wanted to do more than just, help people in our company. I wanted to have a bigger mission out there to try and do more and try and help, people across the country develop these skills. Because what you come to realize, it's not just about hospitality, right? These skills are critical in every job. Forbes magazine did a study where they analyzed over 2,000 new hires. And what they found is that the ones who had gotten fired, 89% of the time, it was because of a lack of some sort of soft skills. Right? Only 11% was because they couldn't do the job itself, right? You think about it, people get fired not because of the aptitude, but because of their attitude. And that's really, I think a critical thing for us all to consider, no matter what job it is. So with that in mind, I worked with a guy who's a friend and colleague here who had written a book called Bring Your A Game to Work. It was originally targeted at youth, But the idea was, what are the most important foundational workplace soft skills, and how do we develop them? And so I worked with him. We got the rights to his intellectual property, and we created a whole curriculum around developing those foundational soft skills. I know it'll be your next question anyhow, Patrick. So let me tell you what they are. Based on the research, what we found is that, work ethic and soft skills at its most core level was really about 7 key skills. It starts with having a positive attitude and kind of the emotional regulation to be able to make that happen. Then you have to have attendance, right? You have to show up. You have to be there. You have to have good appearance, not just in what you wear, but in particular, how you communicate. That's really important in the nonprofit world because, whether it's emails, calls, that speaks volumes to you and the organization. It's also about having ambition, doing more than the minimum, being willing to be that lifelong learner, having acceptance of other people, of the rules, having appreciation for the people you work with and for, and then finally, having the accountability to do what you say you're going to do every single day.
I think a lot of people who listen to this podcast relate well to all 7 of those, or to at least totally understand that this is a thing that is necessary, absolutely critical for a successful career in the nonprofit world. And I really love that your career or your thought process started in the hospitality industry, because if there's one thing that I wish everybody on earth would do is plan an event and then be a waiter or waitress or a server at some point. And if you can double up and be like a server at an event, you're going to be good, because you will never complain about service. You'll never complain about logistics for events, because you'll understand that the chaos behind, and then the way that they present themselves, knowing that chaos is burning down behind them, is such a remarkable skill. And you can use that in any particular place of employment going forward ever. I love it.
Yeah. I use the duck metaphor a lot, right? You see ducks just gliding on the water, but down below, they're just freaking out down there with their little paws, right? That's what we have to try and do. And having the empathy around that certainly is a big piece.
I think so too. So I'd love to go through, because I think if I usually work in 5s, but we're going to work in 7s today. So you get a bonus 2 extra things as part of the podcast today. But I'd love to go kind of through your workplace skills and talk a little bit about each one of them, because I think we, in the nonprofit world, need to remind ourselves that we really do well at these, but maybe some nuggets we can take away to tweak and be a little bit better. So let's talk, sort of the onset is attitude. I've often said, both here on the podcast and in interviews and just in general trainings, is that waking up, being positive is a choice. And it is, and in my estimation, it is a moral obligation, because what you do positively or negatively affects others. And if you're going to be a cloud of just rain and dour attitude, it's going to reflect not only on you, but your organization, and it's going to make other people upset. So what can we do to stay positive in situations where you're looking at the world around us? It's actually crazy. It sucks.
Right. Sometimes it is really hard, but it is such that choice, right? Because what you find is that attitude, more than anything else, right, is contagious. If it's positive, right, it just feeds itself. If it's negative, we've all been in that situation, right, where things just seem like everything goes wrong. What we do for each one of the skills is we want to clearly define kind of what it is and what you can do. So what we say for attitude, it's staying positive in every situation and take control of the way you react. So what I kind of take to that is, don't let a bad moment become a bad event, right? Don't let a bad, traffic incident destroy your day. If you can figure out a way to regulate that emotion, that's really great. And that's really one of the things we have to always consider, because there are bad things that happen every single day. What you have to do is figure out what's your strategy to take control of how you react to it, because that, more than anything else, will help you keep that positive attitude that you decided you were going to have when you woke up in the morning.
When you're dealing with somebody who maybe counters to, like, I don't know how to control that. Are there any tips that you give to say, how do you just manage like the pure rage of something that happens, or the utter disappointment? Because a lot of our initial one is like, wow, screw this. And you just kind of throw up your hands. Any suggestions on like, hey, breathe in, whatever, like what's like a one thing you can take away to control the way you react with your attitude?
So I wouldn't even say it's one thing. What I would recommend everybody do is create a list. Maybe we call it an attitude top 10, but what are 10 strategies that you can do to kind of just take yourself back for a moment? Maybe that is take a breath. Maybe it's take a walk. Maybe it's meditate. Maybe it's run. Maybe it's play some happy music, right? But find out what those things are for you and have a list. Because if you just have one, it may not work in that particular situation. It may not be a place, right? If you're at an event and things are going crazy, you can't just like, I'm going to go take a mile run. That's not going to work. But have some strategies that you can use in different situations.
I like that you have to be proactive about it, and being proactive about it makes you think about it. And the more you think about it, you can sort of position yourself to be positive in every possible situation. So I love that a lot. Your second item here is attendance.
Yeah.
Talk about why that's so important.
Well, it's about reliability, right? At the end of the day, the reason why attendance is so important in our world is because if you're not on time, people start to question your reliability about everything. If we're asking people for money, right? If we're trying to get their trust, if we don't have good attendance, it's going to destroy that. So showing you're reliable in every phase of your life is what attendance is all about. It's being on time every time. And if you're consistently late to meetings or calls or whatever, people take notice. And that really, you may think it's not a big deal, but it really adds up over time. And it becomes a real challenge for people to start to have that reliability and trust in you. So that's why we talk about attendance as a key factor, even for people who are like, oh, I'm not entry level anymore, I'm not on the clock. It's critical still at that stage.
I am a Vikings fan at heart, and yet Vince Lombardi's whole bit of if you're early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. If you're late, never bother showing up kind of bit. I love it more than anything. But does attendance only mean, here's how I always took attendance when I'm sort of reading through your list and we're sort of prepping for this interview, is being showing up at meetings, attending mentally to meetings, right? So showing up for others. So you're not just sitting at a meeting and just sort of going through motions. It's attending that meeting and being purposeful and making eye contact and really being present too. Does that have something to do with it?
Definitely. And prepared, right? Present and prepared, I think, are two great ways to kind of take that in, because again, people notice that. If you're just rushing in and, whoa, wait, what's going on? I'm just waiting to get to my next thing. People will really pay attention, and that becomes a problem. So, just take those little things can really make a big difference when it comes to that reliability.
I love that's kind of the theme here, is that these little things that you think may take for granted are so important, like appearance, which is the next skill that we talk about. Why is appearance so important?
Literally, one of the things that I want to try and stress more than anything else is it's not what you wear. And that's important. But in this world, it's about how you communicate. What do you put out there? How do you talk on the phone? What's your website like? What are your emails like? Really, those kinds of things we don't always think about. But again, communicate as much as your physical appearance and what you choose to wear.
I always like to read back things that I write to see if it sounds like or reads like I wanted it to say. I remember in sort of writing projects that I would record things first and then sort of translate them into an email, because then I'm getting the full range of emotions, whether I need an exclamation point. And again, I realize that I am a human exclamation point and that every sentence could end with one. I understand that. But the way that you put a period or an exclamation point in an email is super important on the appearance of what you're trying to say. And again, I'm so glad that it's not what you look like 100%. Though, I mean, people are going to make judgment calls either way, but being professional and just showcasing that you are there for your people, your programs, your services, your donors, your supporters, so unbelievably important.
Definitely.
Ambition is an interesting one that you bring up as a workplace skill, because I think ambition can have a very negative connotation. Why why is it a skill that you do? Okay, because you look like, right, the word glad, like the movie Gladiator, right? So I'm going to go throwback here. This is going to be super nerdy, but Commodus, who's taking over, has one of his skills that didn't get mentioned by his dad. God, watch this movie, please. Is ambition. And ambition wasn't one of the skills that was required to lead Rome. And so we kind of think of it as a bad guy thing. Why is ambition a positive thing to talk about?
Because it's not about your personal ambition per se. Like, you're not trying to get ahead. And that's the problem, right? The word can be a little loaded, but it's about doing a little extra, adding a little bit more value, right? What else can you do each time that's just a little bit more, right? In the hospitality world, we talk, you don't want to just meet people's needs. You want to exceed them, right? That's how you really step up. And that's when people notice, right? They're expecting you to do A, and you do A plus 1. And people are like, ooh, that really starts to send a strong message about your commitment and what you want to do, right? You're not here showing ambition. You're trying to take over the world. You're showing ambition to add value, do a little bit more. And that, I think, really speaks volumes more than, this idea that you're trying to position yourself for the next thing or this, that, or the other. Don't think of it that way, but also think of lifelong learning as part of ambition.
Think about it when
you're constantly growing.
Yeah, when you're a nonprofit and there are so many people that would want to donate, but there's a lot of nonprofits as options. What are you doing to differentiate yourself as an organization? What are you doing differently as somebody who's cultivating or maybe saying thank you? What are you doing? What are you thanking above and beyond? Or are you just sending them bare minimum, email thank you? Or are you doing a handwritten thank you note, right? The bare minimum is a written receipt that says thanks on it for your donation.
Right.
That's the bare minimum, right? Do more than the minimum because everybody else is going to do the minimum. So be different and be ambitious enough to say that you want to stack value to your donors and to your supporters and to those that you're serving. I love it. Acceptance is an interesting one here, right? So acceptance of sort of directions. What else? What are we talking about from the idea of acceptance?
So it's about respect. You're respecting other people, whether or not that respect is following the rules. Oftentimes when you're doing an event and planning it, you may try and, get around some rules. You may try and do some things that may be a little questionable, right? But follow the rules, right? But have respect for other people and what they do. Whether or not, again, that goes back to your idea of, be a server and know what it's like.
Yeah.
But respect other people's time, respect who they are. And that really helps you kind of create that emotional connection from a soft skills perspective that really creates long-term bonds with people because they see, where you are, where you're from, and you see where they are and where they're from. That respect is a key piece of that. And that's really what acceptance is all about.
Yeah, I really like that too. It's I like what you say about be coachable. I think when we have an idea in the nonprofit world of what we want to have being in the ask, I want to ask for $1,000. That's what I want. And you're listening to a donor that is trying to teach you or coach you in the moment, not even like on purpose, but like arbitrarily and sort of just subtly coach you on more or less, is listen, accept that they're going in one direction or another, and then be willing and openness to learn from those who are teaching you, and that this is the parameters that they're setting, not necessarily the ones that you're setting. And I think that fluidity will give you a lot better end game with a relationship than being rigid and just saying, this is the only thing I can do.
Yep. And really that speaks to it more than anything else, right? How do you don't have to be rigid. You want to learn. The famous Walt Whitman quote that's now been, co-opted by Ted Lasso, right? Be curious, not judgmental. And I think that really kind of speaks to it.
I didn't think we'd get a Ted Lasso reference in here today, but we did. And then I'm going to cross that off the old big board. One less I need to worry about today. I love that.
I had to do something slightly more current than Gladiator. Sorry.
That's very true. I appreciate you bumping up the modernity of this podcast by 25 years. I thank you.
That's nice.
One of the things that everybody is going to recognize, and we talk a lot about on the podcast, and you should be talking a lot about in your nonprofit, is appreciation. I know that people know this. It is always good to talk about it again and again and again. Why is appreciation so important?
Because we talk about it all the time, but rarely do we really follow through on it. Right? Oh yeah, again, I sent them out an email, said thank you, right? But we sometimes focus only on like our donors. How are we showing appreciation to our staff? How are we showing appreciation to our community? How are we showing appreciation to, right, the others that we work with? Sometimes we get so focused on one group, but the power there is to do it for everybody. And that really is one of the things that you want to think about when it comes to appreciation. How do you just have it become part of who you are?
There's nothing more powerful, I think, than an organization that is known for its appreciation, its gratitude towards others and everybody. And if you're in an organization, again, trying to talk about, to parlay this with ambition too, which is what's the minimum? Are you known as an organization that just says thanks? Or are you known as an organization that actively seeks out others to lift up and say, hey, great job. You do a lot for our community, even if they have nothing to do with your organization. Why can't you be the nonprofit that is notorious for lifting up others, for doing good in the community?
Yeah.
What harm is that going to do other than make everybody know who you are and appreciate you just as much as you appreciate them?
Yeah. A great example of this, I've known a couple of organizations when they do like the big fundraising dinner and they're all there, and the president or whoever gets up to speak first, the first thing they do is recognize and applaud the staff that's working. Hey, thank you all for taking your time to be here, for doing those kind of things. And again, those little things people notice, and there's no downside. Right? So take advantage of it.
That's the other thing too. There is no downside to being joyfully appreciative of others.
Yeah.
None. I mean, it's all upside. The downside to it is it takes time, but then think about what benefit you're getting in the long run. Think about what relationships you're curating in the long run. Think about what others are talking about you in a super positive light because you said thanks. My favorite in the appreciation realm is when you write a thank you note and then you get a thank you note for sending them a thank you note or a thank you call while you're giving a thank you call. Like it's this weird moment of like circular appreciation that is like keeps going round and around because it makes them feel good. It makes you feel good. And they want to throw it back at you because it feeds off of it. And in the same way that sort of your attitude affects others, so does your appreciation. If you are not grateful, how many people are going to step up and try to help when you need it? If you're never grateful, how many people are going to go the extra mile and showcase their ambition? For leaders within a nonprofit organization, you have to be the most joyful and appreciative person ever, because you're setting the standard for what everybody else is supposed to be doing too.
Yep. And that leadership piece of it is key in all of these, right? You have to model the behaviors you want others to do. Absolutely.
And I'm glad we saved this one for the last, is because there is accountability as you sort of wrap up this list of 7. There's an honesty piece here. There is an integrity piece here. Why is accountability so unbelievably important?
It's your brand. It is who you are. Our definition for accountability is living honestly and having integrity with every decision you make. Refuse to rationalize bad decisions. And I think, that last one is really kind of what smacks most of us in the face, right? What we end up doing so often is, I know I wouldn't normally do this, but, we're at our deadline, or we need, we're got to get more fundraising, before this, end of month goal or whatever it is. And we, sometimes cut corners or do things that, we wouldn't necessarily be proud of. Having honesty and integrity, right? Honesty is about, right, speaking the truth. Integrity is about living it. And what do you do to make sure that your words match your actions and vice versa? And that really, that's why accountability for us is the top of our pyramid. It is the thing, right? You can talk about the other 6 skills, but if you don't have accountability to do them, it's not going to matter in the end. And so we have to remember that, we are always being watched. right? People are always looking at what we do. And that leadership piece here is so critical. What can we do to make sure that we are modeling the behavior and leading the organization in a way that promotes integrity and honesty?
Mention a couple of things that I think are really good to sort of digest here. One is they're always watching. I think with social media now and with everything sort of being as transparent as possible, everybody is watching what you do. And if you are going to be a major player in the nonprofit world, all eyes are on you. They're looking for you for leadership. They're looking to you to make great decisions, and they're looking at your need to be honest. And when you have a hiccup, that choice, right? So that choice between, well, it's because we wanted to do this, or we own it, and that was a mistake on our end. Which one's going to last the fewest amount of time and hours you're going to spend on? Is it dragging it on, trying to justify, or is it just admitting and moving on?
Yeah. And what's great about admitting is that's when you can grow.
Yeah.
Right. If you're always rationalizing it, you're like, hey, it wasn't really that big a deal. You're never going to get out of that situation. You're going to keep putting yourself into a place where you're going to have to keep rationalizing. So if you can own it, that's when you can fix it. That's when things get better. That's when you learn and grow as a leader.
Is accountability the hardest and the most important, or is on this list one that you would say is, well, I don't want you to rank in order, but if you could pick one that's maybe the most challenging to nonprofits, what would it be that you found in social groups or in community groups that you've been working with is the most difficult, but the most beneficial? Or maybe those are two different.
I'm going to spin this on you, Patrick.
I love it.
I don't want it to be about my opinion. I want to instead give your listeners an opportunity to use a growth exercise around this. All right. So take all 7 of them, right? Attitude, attendance, appearance, ambition, accountability, acceptance, and appreciation. Put them all in there. And then what I'd like each person to do, think about your own behavior and rank them from 1 to 7. What's the one that you think you do consistently the best, second best, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and 7th? And then really ask yourself, why is that one number 7? Why is that one number 6? How do I leverage my 1? How do I leverage my 2? And make it more of a personal growth thing, because they're all critically important. If you don't, right, if you have a gaping hole in one of them, it doesn't matter how good you are in the rest. People will notice, and it will be a problem for you and your organization. Right. So you don't have to take your number 7 and become the best at it. It doesn't have to work your way up, but figure out how you can keep it from becoming a pothole that derails your car.
If you're caught as one that's negative, or one that you just need to work on, what's the first step? Let's just say let's talk about attendance. Let's talk about like that just from a time standpoint and sort of being present. What's the first step that you would need to take outside of recognizing that that's number 7? Like, I'm late and I need to do this. What's an example of where you start to begin to get better at these particular soft skills?
Yeah, obviously you said awareness is the first part, but then what I would do is sort of back it up. Why am I doing this? What's causing this behavior or the lack of behavior? Is it that I don't think I need it? Is it that I never realized that it was important? Is it, there are other things that are holding me back? What is it? And try and really kind of deconstruct why you're not doing it. And that's really, I think, where you start, because then you can start to really break down whether or not it's an attitude issue, sort of a mental piece, whether or not it's, physical, like I'm always, late because I've got all, these things going on, or I never realized how important email is, or whatever it is, deconstruct it and then start from there.
I love that that we're kind of leading into the fall and into the winter here now. And I think it's always great not to just wait until New Year's to find that new resolution as a person or as an organization. So this is a really good time to reflect on what skills you need to improve on leading into the end of the year, and then what you can kick into high gear starting at the beginning of your calendar. So don't need to wait until the end of the year to start looking at this. You can start building now when you've got some time before school starts and kind of ramping up. I think that's super important. If there was a group who was saying, this sounds fantastic, Josh, you're speaking truth to me, and I love all of it. I have no idea where to start, and I don't know where to begin because I am not in a situation that I can help make this available. How on earth do people get a hold of you so you can hold their hands through this entire thing?
Yeah, well, it's funny you should ask, Patrick. You can go to our website. It's just www.workethic.org. There are free resources there. There's research. You can sign up for weekly work ethic tips that get delivered every Monday to your email inbox, just something to be thinking about. You can learn more about speaking engagements, our curriculum, our online learning, all sorts of different things are there at workethic.org.
We're going to have, of course, a bunch of these links and a bunch of the examples in the show notes. So make sure you check that out. And if you get in a rut, pick up the phone or send him an email, give Josh a call and say, I need some help getting my soft skill game up to par. Because again, I think as nonprofit leaders, we need to remind ourselves of what we're really good at. And then even if we're great at it, always room for growth, right? Remember, this is part of the, right? We're always trying to add value to ourselves. We're always trying to do more than the minimum. This is a good way of showing your ambition by trying to be better here by the Center for Work Ethic Development. Josh, thank you so much for being a guest on the official Do Good Better podcast. It was a joy to chat with you. Thanks so much for your insight and for what you're doing to kind of make sure that these skills are passed on over and over and over again.
Hey, my pleasure. I love the work that you're doing. Anything we can do to help make people better, and do more good, hey, that's a win.
I love it. Thanks, my friend. We'll
right.
We'll talk to you next time. Thanks.
Sounds great. Bye, Patrick.